Hi, I'm Dr. Adam Miller from ARISS MD, here to talk to you today about the ARISS-1 pilot clinical study that we conducted between March 2018 and June 1st, 2018. This is a first ever study in human participants on the performance of a nanoemulsed or water-soluble form of full spectrum hemp oil in the treatment of anxiety, pain, insomnia, irritable bowel, eczema, and acne. 2018 was a remarkable year in medicine. Very rarely does a medical topic become a major cultural theme for the year, but certainly cannabis and cannabis as medicine and hemp as medicine was one of the key events of all of 2018. And when we were approached by patients to get our opinion on whether or not we thought that hemp oil was a valid option in terms of therapies, we realized that there was quite a disconnect between the growers in the US, particularly Colorado, the consumer, and clinicians who really didn't know how to get their brain around it, and the politicians who weren't even sure how to regulate it. And so we boldly stepped into this space and said, there's a huge opportunity to reduce these all too common ailments, but we're going to have to approach our patients as citizen scientists. We're going to have to be willing as physicians to step out behind the white coat and say, this is a co-labor moment in medical history. So I want to walk through today how we designed this study, what we learned, some of the things that surprised us and surprised everyone through the study, and then talk to you about some of the basic protocols that we developed after doing this particular study. And then at the end, I'll give you some caveats, some things to watch out for, and a few clinical pearls. And then we'll give you a little insight to phase 2 of the research and our very exciting collaboration with 6 national laboratories to look not only at the subjective response, but look at the objective response of people to hemp oil. Full disclosure, at the end of the ARISS-1 study, we realized that there was a lot of confusion and lack of trust and confidence about the quality of products in the marketplace. And therefore, we took the exact study products, we put a Dr. Miller's hemp oil label across it and made it available both in retail and for our patients at a significantly reduced price so that more people could benefit and give us feedback in an effort to move this science forward. But without a doubt, we believe this is one of the purest, most consistent, now researched forms of hemp oil. Who am I? I was a dentist. I went to medical school. I became a surgeon. But during my surgical residency, that's right, believe it or not, I added internal medicine in there. And after graduation, I was in private practice in Pennsylvania. I did cosmetic surgery, sleep apnea surgery, and a lot of dermatological surgery for about 15 years before being recruited to Borneo. And it was in Borneo that I built a medical tourism program that was really an integrative medical center for tourists to come from all over Asia, some from the US and Europe, to have liposuction, dental implants, facelifts, eyelid surgery, rejuvenation, and with the aid of reflexologists, nutritionists, massage therapists, and dental assistants, we really cultivated an integrative model in 2008 when no one else in the world was really doing that. That we were led back to the United States then in 2014. I got board certified by the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine and the American Academy of Age Management Medicine. We then started ARISS MD. I've co-created Intelligent Melatonin, a skincare line, and I'm one of the associate editors of the Journal of Oral Implantology. So I am a rogue surgeon who went looking at agriculture for solutions, for medicines that may have fewer side effects and truly help reduce what I call inflammaging. Inflammation, accelerating aging, and along the way, contributing to chronic diseases like high blood pressure and heart disease and insulin resistance. And here's a very significant turning point in my evolution as a dentist, physician, and surgeon. And these 2 gentlemen I met in the interior of the jungle in Borneo. And the man who is holding up the branches there has just finished explaining to me that he discovered that if the native people, like this gentleman that we have our arm around, chew on the boong kong leaf, it's called. This is the mountain varietal of boong kong leaf, for 5 or 10 minutes, enough to sap or suck the juices out of the leaf and swallow the juices and spit out the rest of the leaf, that he was able to eliminate gout. Now, for reasons unknown, the people in the interior of the jungle in Sarawak, where I live, had a very high level of gout. They also have a very high level of heart disease, something that perhaps we need to study more at another time. But nevertheless, I saw during my treks into the jungle people who were suffering from gout and swollen toes and red feet. And then this particular village, what we call a kampong over there, in the Bahasa word kampong, had almost zero gout. And this gentleman was able to explain to me that he had figured out how to use agriculture as medicine to address a very specific issue that dramatically helped improve quality of life for these people. And that got me, a very ambitious surgeon, thinking a little bit more outside of my surgical box. Well, returning to the US in 2015, certainly there was a lot of discussion happening about hemp, and the confusion among my patients here in the US is what really drove us to reach out to a reputable farm in Colorado and start what we call real world research, connecting the divide or closing the gap between very intelligent organic farmers who know how to cultivate the very best crops, patients who have been able to get some relief through experimentation, but all the while wishing they had medical guidance, the marketing forces that work in America who want to drive sales as their primary objective, and then the medical community, many of my colleagues who are saying, look, anything related to hemp or cannabis is alternative. It opens doors to liability, and I want nothing to do with it. In the middle of that maelstrom, we stood and said, we have a responsibility to take our patients who are already using hemp products and help co-labor with them so that we can discover protocols that other people around the world might benefit from. And so that came to be in the form of ARISS. We reached out to 62 men and women between the ages of 17 and 93 with an average age of 45. And we were able to get 46 of them to adhere to a 3-month protocol of simply taking 1 gel cap in the morning and 1 gel cap in the afternoon or evening. So we started out with 62, we lost 28%, which landed us at 46 people. Our primary objectives were, number one, no one had ever studied in a clinical trial the water-soluble or nano-emulsed form, we'll be explaining that in just a minute, of full-spectrum hemp oil. This is a 0 THC product. So number one, somebody needed to break the ice and start looking at this to ensure that it's safe, that it has a value and we're not wasting money, and that hopefully we can get some baseline dosing guidelines for patients around the world. So we targeted pain, anxiety, insomnia. Anybody listening to this knows somebody with pain, anxiety, or insomnia? You all do. And then eczema, acne, and irritable bowel. These are all, to a certain degree, linked to inflammation. And therefore, ARISS stands for Agriculture Reducing Inflammatory Signs and Symptoms. Our secondary objectives were, this is to see what real world research was going to look like. Could we afford it? Logistically, is it doable and still being able to manage patients day in, day out at a high level, because the demand is high and our standards are high. And then to assess what? Well, we want to know if this is a better alternative. Certainly there are medications out there that are helping people control joint pain and back pain and manage headaches and get better sleep at night. But many of those prescriptions have side effects. And so we wanted to see if we could reduce the dependence on medication. We wanted to see if we could treat acne and eczema, which a lot of people had ignored when it comes to hemp oil. And then we wanted to see the effect on irritable bowel, all as secondary objectives. In the end, we had a sniffing salts moment and thought, when our patients started asking us, hey, I'm kind of nervous if the study's coming to an end. I got some really good results and I want to continue therapy. I don't want to go back to where I was 3 months ago. And we hurried up and put together a label, and were able to continue continuity of care for our patients. And we chose Dr. Miller's PCR hemp oil because, number one, we wanted to have a bit of a throwback to the apothecary model. We didn't want to be real strong modern marketing in the way we were approaching things, because our core belief is that we need to approach our patients as citizen scientists and co-labor in an effort to scavenge data and real world user experience, just like every other industry in the world, which is listening well to their customers to find out what they figured out, honoring the intelligence of people who are out in the marketplace, buying products and experimenting and putting things in combination. So we wanted to have a very clinical apothecary type invitation and make sure we upheld this institute model. And I'll just quick run through some of the key components here. We partnered with Folium Biosciences. I went to Colorado. I saw their facility. I reevaluated their science. I met with their PhDs. And I literally couldn't find a place in the world that was more tightly run. At every level, they were pharmaceutical grade. And so, and they were willing to, and they heard the wisdom behind what we wanted to do. And therefore, they were more than willing to partner with us. And we're grateful for that. Again, we talked about why we wanted to honor the doctor in this puzzle, because we think that there needs to be a partnership there. In March of 2018, we couldn't put THC into our study subjects because it was A, illegal to bring it in from out of state, and B, we didn't want even less than 0.3% THC confounding the picture and putting people at risk for a positive drugs test at work. Certainly organically grown US-based hemp is critically important. Why? To help ensure that there's a lower chance of getting metal contaminants and pesticides in the final gel cap. And then phytocannabinoids, and knowing the exact level, how much of those CBD, the number one, by weight, phytocannabinoids, CBG, CBN, CBC, working with a manufacturer who can give us very specific, consistent certificates of analysis on what each batch of the product is delivering to our patients was critically important. This is a water-soluble form, which we're going to get into more in just a second. And then it's important that we understand this milligram marker that's on the front of many labels. In the state of Washington alone, there's more than 800 CBD products, if you can believe that. Many of them are labeled with these random milligram doses, and many times it's unclear what that is actually representing. In our case, that had to be the amount of actual CBD, cannabidiol, in the product. Okay, the key feature, the intelligence of this technology called nanoemulsion, making this natural oil water soluble so that it can go into the human body, whether you have food in your stomach or not, whether you've consumed a fatty meal or not, is valuable for this reason. The red line represents CBD that was delivered in an animal study in a water-soluble form. Blood was drawn from the animal before the animal was given, in this case, beagles, dogs, were given CBD in a water-soluble form at 0.0. And then about every 15 minutes, the blood was redrawn. And the subset of animals that were given the oil form is represented by the blue line. And it's very clear that there's a 4 to 5-fold increase in blood levels given the same milligram dosing between the water-soluble form and the fat-soluble form. And so this is what it looks like. A standard oil is going to be this big, fatty globule that is difficult to absorb through the GI tract. estimates are 10 to 15% absorption. But what we used is the 25 nanometer microemulsion, which in the animal study, preclinical animal study, showed a much higher bioavailability, which has implications in terms of value. In other words, you're not wasting your dosing through the GI tract, but you're getting more of those active ingredients into the bloodstream. Question is, does that really play out clinically? And ARISS-1 is our attempt to try to contribute to the pool of knowledge about the efficacy of this very interesting technology. Well, when we were looking for a study partner, it was really important to us that they were able to provide with each batch of study product, an internal analysis of which cannabinoids were in there and how much by weight. And then, of course, we wanted to see that there were no residual solvents, heavy metals, or pesticides, and then terpene results as well. You know, the cannabinoids and the terpenes in a full spectrum product, it's pretty clear that they work together synergistically in what is called the entourage effect. And we simply wanted to know that it was as full a spectrum as possible and that it was consistent with every batch for each patient. Let's move on to the testing groups. Our first testing group was the pain group. By now, you've heard that we have a narcotic addiction problem in America. It is alarming. In my residency training alone, I had 2 professors, 2 attendings, who were arraigned and they were arrested, actually, for trafficking narcotics, and both individuals had started out with pain, chronic pain issues that led to narcotic addictions. So certainly there is a growing audience of people who are, fingers crossed, hoping that CBD, with or without THC, will continue to help more people who are suffering with chronic pain. What did we know in March? Well, here's a summary statement of kind of where we were at in the community in terms of whether or not there was a precedent for using hemp to control pain. In 2017, the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine report on cannabis stated that there is conclusive evidence that cannabinoids, including cannabidiol, CBD, CBN, CBG, are effective for the treatment of chronic pain in adults. How does it work? Well, there are things we know, and humbly, there's a lot of things yet to be discovered, but we do recognize that there is some action as an allosteric modulator at the mu and delta opioid narcotic receptors. We know that there's a potent anti-inflammatory effect that seems to be 20 times more than what aspirin can offer, that CBD raises prostaglandin E2, an anti-inflammatory, and decreases other pro-inflammatory agents like TNF alpha. And there's modulating, and I think this is the central theme that we should be considering when we study cannabidiol and hemp. I see this amazing botanical offering as a modulator, a referee, a governor of this dynamic interface between one nerve and another nerve, which, as you know, the nerves communicate with each other by converting an electrical impulse called an action potential into little chemical packets called neurotransmitters, and then back into an electrical impulse. It's just an absolutely fascinating system, this nervous system of ours. And it makes sense that it would have this built-in intelligence. Imagine the referee courtside at Wimbledon, raising the hand, calling it in and out, controlling the game and making sure people play fair. Well, that's what the endocannabinoid system is doing throughout the nerves in your periphery, out here in the extremities, and centrally in your brain and spinal cord. And what external cannabinoids do when you take hemp oil is they help raise that pool of the body's natural cannabinoids that are doing the refereeing here in this dynamic interface. And this has implications in pain management. This has implications in managing anxiety. this has implications most likely in helping to regulate inflammation, and probably is one of the significant reasons why the hemp oil may help with insomnia. Go ahead and write this down. This is one of the central references for cannabinoids in pain management. Ethan Rousseau, I have a ton of respect for him and the work he's done, but many papers on this topic will reference this particular chapter. What we discovered in our pain group is a modest 10 to 15% reduction on pain scores. When we asked people to rate on a scale of 0 to 10 before hemp oil and 12 weeks later after using hemp oil twice a day, 25 milligrams in the morning, 25 milligrams in the afternoon, it was a 10 to 15% reduction across the board. Some people had dramatic improvements, but on average, 10 to 15%. Now, some of the nuances here, though, we saw more reduction in limitations. In other words, pain patients may not have said that they had a big drop off in pain, but many of them had a significant improvement in their range of motion and a reduction in limitations of activities of daily living. And it's been said that CBD is a very nice muscle relaxant, so shouldn't be a surprise. But take note of this. 9 out of the 16 participants in the pain group who were using number 1, Motrin, number 2, Tylenol, and number 3, Advil and Tylenol in conjunction, reduced their use of nonsteroidals by 25%, which has implications in helping reduce your risk for a stomach ulcer and has implications in helping reduce the impact of nonsteroidals on kidney function. Now, diffuse pain patients responded better to the gel cap hemp oil than those who had focal joint pain. Within the groups that had more focal joint pain, those that complained of hand and wrist and foot and ankle pain, they responded better to the gel caps, the oral hemp oil, than those who complained of a single shoulder or a knee or a hip. Now, understand that as I'm presenting this, I'm working to downplay some of the amazing testimonials we saw. For instance, John had a brain injury that left him with a diffuse, achy stiffness and pain. And John in 12 weeks went from only being able to tie his shoes to playing basketball and running up and down the court. Andy, she hadn't walked a mile for at least 3 years because of bilateral knee pain and osteoarthritis. And she sent us an email and said she was crying because she'd been able to walk 1 mile. And so there were some dramatic examples, and we're still trying to figure out how to pair the right indication, the right patient profile with the right dose and the right form of hemp oil. This is what we've come up with thus far. I've tried to organize my recommendations with a certain value in terms of how strong a recommendation I feel like I can give my patients who walk through this door every day. When it comes to pain, again, diffuse, probably going to respond better overall than someone with just a knee, hip, or shoulder pain. And within the diffuse category of pain, we can give a strong recommendation for 1 nanoemulse gel cap at 25 milligrams of CBD, 25 milligrams of proven CBD taken twice per day. Probably the tinctures starting with 15 milligrams a day or twice a day will have an effect. And then we found just anecdotally that vape for diffuse pain is a weak indication. And then under the focal pain, although we give a relatively weak indication for using gel caps, I will say that those people who weren't getting the kind of response for their knee, hip, and shoulder pain, who we put on a high potency salve, many of them did get a significant enough improvement that they wanted to continue the salve. And you can see there how much we're using. We're talking about 400 milligram salve versus a 1,000 milligram salve that we were using with our patients. Let's move on to the second study group, the anxiety group. It's been reported that 1 in 6 adults in America are on either an anti-anxiety or antidepressant. And I would say that in our modern dynamic practice full of both men's health and women's health and college age health, that 1 out of every 2 patients will report a disturbing level of anxiety in their life. It's ubiquitous. And what we know from authors like Blessing and others is that preclinical evidence conclusively demonstrates CBD, cannabidiols, efficacy in reducing anxiety behaviors relevant to PTSD, generalized anxiety, panic disorders, and social anxiety disorders. How does it work? Well, we know some things, and again, lots of room for discovery. We know that there's an indirect effect on serotonin and serotonin receptors in the body. We know that there's reduced amygdala, that emotional center in the brain, and the connectivity of the amygdala, that region in the brain, to other regions in the brain. We've learned these things through some very, very cool neuroimaging studies. And again, it's been the acute management of anxiety has been studied more than chronic management. We were a bit disappointed by the visual analog scores for anxiety management in our study, a modest 5% reduction. Almost no one had worsening, but we were hoping for a little bit higher response. Again, though, note that those participants in anxiety group, like the pain group, said that they felt like they had less limitation during the day to do the things they need to do, more than actual raw anxiety score reduction. Even more so, even more impressive was the belief. We asked every participant to also rate each week, each of the 12 weeks, how much you believe that the hemp oil is improving your particular condition. And in all the groups, on average, we saw that people rated a higher belief that it was actually doing something than they rated their score actually improving for the specific indication like pain or anxiety. So we can gain some insight into how to do observational studies. And our take-home message is make sure you're asking and evaluating with multiple different questions from multiple different angles. Take note of this. Roughly 1 out of 7 working men in America has alcohol use disorder. That's alarming, and that's probably conservative. We found a 30% reduction, 36% reduction in alcohol use among those patients in the participants in the anxiety group who were regular alcohol users, which meant they were consuming at least 1 drink a night, and at least 1 night a week were binging with more than 4 to 5 drinks in a setting. I believe that by decreasing cravings for carbohydrates, and there is a commensurate reduction in the craving for alcohol, and this is something that hemp oil needs to be studied more for. The anxiety management with the decrease in cravings is why we're seeing hemp work for alcohol reduction. Social anxiety has been studied more than general anxiety. And we're going to talk, that's a nuance there we're going to talk about, because the form, how quickly the hemp gets into you and gets to a therapeutic blood level really matters depending on your indication. If you're getting ready to give a talk, you want fast onset and you want relatively fast elimination from the body. Now, if constipation was present in our study group among the anxiety patients, we found that the constipation generally improved in both men and women. Take note of this. For some patients with anxiety and constipation, for the first 2 days of taking the gel caps, the hemp oil, 2 hours after taking that first dose, they had an urgency to go clear their bowels, and they described a large elimination. After 2 days, that phenomenon disappeared, and for the remainder of the study, those 10 weeks, they reported generally better bowel function than their baseline, okay? So here's where we arrived. We can give a strong recommendation for using the gel caps for social anxiety. Make sure you take that at, I would recommend, an hour before the event or the known trigger. We can give a strong recommendation for the tincture for social anxiety at least 30 minutes before your event, and you can titrate up as needed with the drops. And then vaping, strong indication here. In our practice, we saw that 10 to 20 minutes before an event really helped patients control their anxiety for social issues. I'm going to go ahead and give gel caps a medium recommendation for generalized anxiety. And I'm looking forward to future studies where we can better understand what's the right dose for men and women in different age groups, and to better dial in that therapeutic dose. But note this: if your patient is using alcohol and or a benzodiazepine like Xanax, I would ramp that up from a medium indication to a high or strong indication to use hemp oil gel caps in the treatment of anxiety, because it will help them, I believe, many of them, reduce their dependence on alcohol and other GABA activators like Xanax. The testimonials continue to mount in our practice, and I wanted to interject a real world example to kind of keep us all energized here as we roll through the second half of the study. We each week now are hearing testimonials like this one from Chip. I hope you're doing well. I wanted to give you a quick update on my progress. My anxiety is all but gone. I mean, completely gone. I stuck with 2 gel caps a day. I can't tell you what a relief this is, as the levels of anxiety I was dealing with were off the chart. I was actually spinning out of control when I first met you. I was waking up every morning at 2:30 a.m. I was in a sweat of panic. I was overwhelmed with all the blank that was weighing on me. Then with such little sleep compounding the problem, it sucked. I'm now completely chilled out and loving life. Listen to this. He then went on to play citizen scientist and do some self-doctoring at home, putting both his sons, ages 18 and 14, on 1 gel cap in the morning and 1 in the evening for ADHD and anxiety, and they both experienced the same results: improvement in school and focus and calm. So he goes on to praise our study product, and again, we're seeing these testimonials mount, and I'm just so hungry to have more participation from other citizen scientists out there and other clinicians who are willing to help collate the Chips of the world. Why? What's his age? What other confounding variables could be there? Can we assume that the more extreme somebody's anxiety and ADHD and insomnia is, the better hemp oil is going to work for them? These are just some of the tip of the iceberg questions that we want to answer so that more people can have what? A complete turnaround and change in their life, like Chip. Okay, we're moving on to irritable bowel. Irritable bowel with constipation, irritable bowel with diarrhea seems to be more common in women, but the vast majority of patients in our integrated medicine practice have some permeability, have some leaky gut, and will describe times of constipation, offset with times of diarrhea and loose stools, with lots of cramping and bloating in between after a meal. Our irritable bowel group was quickly absorbed during the study into the anxiety group. We just realized that the IBS group was reporting more about their anxiety changes than they were about their gut. And so we absorbed them into the anxiety group, and we asked them, just please keep telling us whether or not your gut transit time, the number of bowel movements a day, is improving, the stool quality, what we call the Bristol stool analysis on a scale of 1 to 7, is improving. We like to be in a 3 or 4 there. And how much bloating, cramping, and discomfort you're having after eating. And so many of them did continue to report on that. Now, note this: we had a few women, 2 or 3, who had dramatic reduction in constipation, and were very excited about that and wrote in an email to tell us that. But both women, in the 3rd month of the study, the final month, noticed that they started to regress back a little bit. Not all the way, but they felt a little bit of the constipation coming back. And what we are asking as we move forward into ARISS 2 is whether or not this growing understanding about dosing should prompt us to actually, after 8 weeks, dial down the dosing. Once these this form of polyunsaturated fatty acids that we call hemp oil, these cannabinoids, once we've kind of tanked up the system and the endocannabinoid internal system has had a chance to reset, should we be dialing down the dose? And I think the answer is yes, and I'm not alone among the authorities in the field who are recommending that. Here's where we landed at this point. Again, one of the humbling things about presenting this material is that 6 months from now, we're going to be able to give you a lot more detailed information, but we've got to start somewhere. My strong recommendations for using the full spectrum gel caps for somebody with IBS or ulcerative colitis or Crohn's include that social anxiety person who's also got some irritable bowel. For tinctures, it would be the same, and for vaping, the same. So social anxiety with any level of irritable bowel, the gel caps, tinctures, or vape, and you can see some guidelines for starting your dosing there. And then probable recommendation for the gel caps in patients with IBD. Why did I throw IBD in there? This is more anecdotal from my practice than it was a formal part of ARISS 1. What we've seen in our practice in one man and one woman thus far with severe ulcerative colitis, forgive me, 2 women and 1 man, with the women having severe ulcerative colitis and the other with mild to moderate ulcerative colitis, getting significant improvement in bowel function with fewer episodes of diarrhea and less bloating and cramping using the hemp oil gel caps. But understand this, they didn't get benefits until they got up to 2, 4, 600 milligrams a day. That's not unsafe. We know from the literature that you can easily take up to 1,600 milligrams a day without significant side effects. The man who had irritable inflammatory bowel disease got good results at about 250 milligrams a day. So a lot to be studied in the terms of inflammatory bowel disease. And just note that in those patients, we checked liver function enzymes and reviewed medications before ramping up those doses. But 0 side effects and lots of benefits for those patients. All right, insomnia, a lesser studied group or ailment, but so common. 1 in 3 Americans has disrupted sleep weekly. The National Academy of Science, Engineering, and Medicine, in their Health Effects of Cannabis report, concluded that there's moderate evidence that cannabinoids help improve short-term sleep disorders. How does it work? It likely works to help sleep through serotonin-like activity. There may be some overlap in effects on the amygdala, that emotional center in the brain, in terms of how that emotion center is communicating with the rest of the brain. And no, this is a theme, one of those quips we like to throw around here at ARISS MD, but we fix sleep during the day. You don't fix sleep at night. And I thank Ruben Nyman, my friend and author of Healing Night, for really helping me own that at a time in my career when I was doing a lot of sleep apnea surgery. It's very difficult to just simply go to sleep. You have to surrender to sleep. And your nervous system needs some convincing at night that it's okay to go to sleep if all day long you've been purely sympathetic on go, go, go. Well, that's where the modulator, that's where the referee of the nervous system during the day can help facilitate the transfer into your dream world at night. We recommend gel caps be taken 1 to 2 hours before bed to help dial down the nervous system and improve sleep. A 5% improvement in sleep, not very significant. However, note this, there was an average reduction in the nights of insomnia in a given week by 1 night. So those who reported at baseline 5 nights of insomnia, by week 12 of the study were reporting only 4 nights. In other words, they gained 1 additional night of good sleep per week. which we think is something to build upon. 2 out of the 3 women, there were 6 women in the Insomnia group that were using sleep aids, significantly reduced their use. This is Ambien and some of the benzodiazepines like Ativan or Valium at night. And a clinical note would be that the hemp oil gel caps seem to work synergistically with about 0.5 to 1 milligram of melatonin. That's a caveat, or I'm sorry, that's a nugget from our clinic. But this was one of those surprises for everyone. Over half the study participants reported an increase in dream intensity, not nightmares, but more vivid dreams during the 12 weeks of taking our hemp oil. So our recommendations, we can give a strong recommendation for the use of tinctures at night, both in helping to get to sleep and stay asleep, but also in particular vaping or tincture for that middle of the night awakening to go pee and you want to try to get back to sleep. The vapor tincture are going to be very useful there. The gel caps, again, are more of that attempt to fix the nervous system during the day so you can improve sleep at night. I wouldn't recommend a gel cap in the middle of the night if you're trying to get back to sleep. I think the tinctures are better there. And then we do have several patients who are using the topical hemp oil salve to rub into their neck or their sore joints, and in those instances can help improve their ability to stay asleep. Headaches were a surprise to us. We did not specifically ask our participants to rate headaches or headache improvement during ARISS-1. However, patients, or participants, I should say, our valued citizen scientists were writing in comments voluntarily saying, I'm not sure if you want to know this information, but I thought I would tell you, I normally get 5 migraines a week, but ever since starting the hemp oil, I have had no migraines. And so both for prevention and rescue therapy, we heard from our very intelligent participants that tension type headaches, migraine type headaches, for both prevention and rescue therapy, the hemp oil gel caps worked very well. Here's an actual example. If you want to see more of the actual participant comments, you can go to ARISSMD.com. In our store area, you'll see some of the research listed out there, and we have a link to, I think, 20 or 30 different participant comments, handwritten comments like this. This is a gentleman from the Midwest who's he is used to taking Advil at 800 to 1,000 milligrams several times a week for headaches. And he noted that he believes CBD was a 10 out of 10 in terms of his confidence that it was helping him. And I'll interpret his writing for you because it's not the most legible. But he said, on my first week of CBD, the hemp oil, I had no headaches at all, underline. That's rare for me, exclamation. I believed, and he goes on to say that my pain had something to do with chronic yeast infections, but I'm thanking God for early results. We can make a strong recommendation because we saw over 50% reduction in the frequency and intensity of headaches in our ARISS-1 participants. A strong recommendation, therefore, to use a 25 milligram gel cap. What we studied, again, is the nanoemulse form. In the morning, what time in particular? We said take it before 10 a.m. And in the afternoon, what time? We said take it after 4 in the evening, both for prevention and for salvage therapy. And I included bruxism or nighttime grinding in our recommendations because many people who have tension headaches have a component of bruxism. And we noticed that if they took the gel caps, that grinding of the teeth, that sore jaw in the morning, which I have treated a lot as both a dentist and physician, is helped with hemp oil. Now, we included some experimental skin groups in the ARISS-1 study. Eczema affects millions of Americans. It is a quality of life issue. It affects confidence. And it is frustrating for patients to deal with it. Typically, they will be on chronic steroid use, which over time, even though it's low potency steroids, can have an effect on the adrenal glands and the immune system. So um, patients with eczema are always looking for ways to improve management. And we were able to find some references, one here from the National Eczema Association, showing that a particular cream that had cannabinoids in it reduced itching and loss of sleep. Itching and loss of sleep linked to eczema? Oh, you bet. So our thinking was, well, if there is, as the Israeli researchers believe, a strong case for CBD and cannabinoids as immune modulators, helping to balance the immune system, then certainly it should have an effect on diseases like eczema. What did we find in ARISS-1? Well, we gave our oral hemp oil in gel cap form to a patient for acne. That was a woman in her mid-40s and a 16-year-old boy. And we found that the oral hemp oil for the 45-year-old woman, this Korean woman, it actually made her acne worse. However, after a week of stopping it, her skin started to improve, and we removed her from the study, and I asked her to start using the topical hemp salve, a 400 milligram salve, twice a day. And after 3 weeks of using that, her skin, she said, had never been more clear as an adult. She wasn't breaking out. And at 6 weeks, we found that result to be durable. Put a star there. That's something to continue to research. We need more clinical research on that. We had, of note, we had one Filipino participant, a man who's had chronic battles with eczema, who, with the oral hemp oil, had an acne breakout. And it's only an N of 1 in 1 here, but in our mind, we're asking the question in future studies, is there something about the Asian male or Asian female who's prone to acne, that there's a tip in hormone regulation, a change in sebum production, that they may actually, with the 25 milligram dose, get a worsening of acne? Well, in the Filipino man's case, the eczema started to clear up, so he held in there. And after, in the second month of therapy, the acne actually cleared up and went away. But listen to this. All eczema sufferers in our study, 2 men and 2 women, had over a 50% improvement in the intensity of their itch, their lesion redness, and frequency of lesions. And I found this to be interesting. 1 man and 1 woman had a very prompt response within 2 weeks. 1 man and 1 woman had a delayed response. They didn't see an improvement in their eczema symptoms until week 6. So we call that an early response and a delayed response. And another note for future research is to try to understand why that response rate was the way it was. We can therefore give a strong recommendation for the use of 25 milligram gel caps for a patient with acne, 1 in the morning, 1 in the evening, and you may need to go up to 100 milligrams twice per day to get control of your eczema. We can't endorse right now the use of oral hemp oil for the treatment of acne. However, we can give a moderate recommendation for using a high potency, clean, non-irritating form of hemp oil topically. It is a potent anti-inflammatory. We know that it has a sebum regulatory effect, and there's good reason to believe that future acne therapies, topical acne therapies, will include hemp oil. Let me conclude then by giving you some tips, some caveats, and then giving you a snapshot glimpse into where we're going with ARISS-2. If you're a pain sufferer and you're reaching for hemp oil, again, the diffuse pain, stiffness, you're looking for increased mobility, consider adding 1 gram to 1.5 grams of a high-grade curcumin. We really like Curcuplex 95 from Zymogen as an additive therapy. And also, you can consider 2 to 3 milligrams of fish oil to be taken in conjunction to synergize with the hemp oil treatment. If you want greater insight into the hemp oil therapy and whether or not it's the fish oil therapy, you may want to consider checking your omega quant level and you can check out their website for more information there. Just keep in mind that we see hemp oil as a reliable tool to improve mobility and range of motion and to help reduce stiffness. Consider, for those with insomnia, adding 0.5 to 1 milligram, what I consider to be brain protective antioxidant levels of melatonin to your hemp oil therapy, and also the very useful amino acid L-theanine in doses of 200 to 400 milligrams daily to help with insomnia. Now, just a clinical pearl for you, but those adult patients in my practice who are battling acne, before I reach for hemp oil alone, I am often trying them on 0.05% of a compounded tretinoin with 3% niacinamide. And as they're getting conditioned, their skin is getting conditioned, I'm having them use the hemp oil salve at night as an anti-inflammatory moisturizer. And those things in combination are appreciated by most adult acne sufferers. A few caveats. I know we're at the end of the presentation here, but please take note of this. Your physician deserves to know if you're trying hemp oil and why you might be using it. Never mind if they're uneducated and untrained about hemp oil. Maybe you can reference an article for them. You know, physicians are incredibly busy, overworked, and they could use a little encouragement from their patients in this arena. The information is everywhere. Making sense of it, organizing it, making sure it's valid is a whole nother ballgame that we are mutually responsible for as clinicians and patients. I recommend that my patients, in fact, we demand it, have a liver function test prior to starting therapy. There is evidence to suggest, although it's mild, that higher doses of CBD in conjunction with medications, even over-the-counter things like Tylenol and other things that may put a burden on the liver, especially a burden on the cytochrome P450 metabolic system, that added burden on the liver may affect the dosing needed for those prescription medications. In other words, very often, if you're taking higher doses of CBD, you might be able to reduce your dose of a prescription medication. Now, very scary, in the last part of 2018, there were growing reports in Wisconsin and Illinois especially of cases, lethal cases of bleeding disorders that were instigated or initiated by synthetic forms of cannabinoids, mainly in the smoked vape pen type products. But read your labels. In 2017, the Penn State study showed that over 70% of hemp oil products were mislabeled. Some of the side effects, well, they're all mild, and we only had 2 patients or 2 study subjects leave the study because of side effects, and they were both because of side effect number 1. These rather type A entrepreneurial types didn't like having what they called the edge come off of their spirit in the workplace. They just felt a little too mellow from non-THC containing hemp oil. It's very interesting. We mentioned the rare side effect of some stool urgency 2 hours after taking the gel caps. Bear in mind, by the way, that the time to therapeutic onset for a gel cap is between 60 and 90 minutes, with peak effect probably being at about 2 hours. So for me, this confirmed what we call pharmacodynamics of the hemp oil gel caps, that these 2 particular women noted that at 2 hours after they're taking their dose, as their body was getting adapted to this new therapy, that at peak effect, they had to go have a large bowel movement. So very interesting. We had one woman say she got mild reflux if she took the hemp oil on an empty stomach. Personally, I experienced that. I took it with a little bit of food, the reflux went away. And actually, it was more burps. It wasn't a burning reflux, it was just little burps. And there was a mild increase in PMS symptoms in a few women, although It was rare. A few women said, for the 3 months of the study, my period was a little heavier. I maybe had a little bit more cramping. However, I put up with it because my period had never been more regular. So they said we felt like there was some internal hormone shift. And we are studying that at a very deep level in ARISS-2. I'll explain in a minute. And then I mentioned the increased memory of nighttime dreaming. Now, this is a passion place for myself and all the study partners on the laboratory side, the farm side, the scientific side, and our patients here in the practice. We want to help build a database curating your user experience globally for dosing. If you fit this age group and you're a male or a female and you have these problems, be it pain, anxiety, insomnia, then you should consider using this product at this dose for this duration. We desperately need those dosing guidelines, and we are in the process of formulating them. General theme here is start low and go slow. Start low and go slow. We found in our study limited evidence to suggest that a large person needs a lot higher dose and a small person needs a lot lower dose. We think everybody should start at a low dose and walk up until they find their sweet zone. What we're talking about is the growing respect across the cannabis community for what is called the U-shaped dose response. And I thank Dr. Jamie for sharing this graphic in one of his recent talks. But there's a sweet spot. We want to find this medium dose that is just right for you. And that doesn't mean that it's the same dose for everybody. We have to walk into that, okay? And we found in our practice that can range between 10 milligrams a day and 600 milligrams a day. But we believe that most people, a reasonable starting point is 25 milligram gel caps taken twice a day. I mentioned a secondary objective being an exploration for me as a dentist, physician, surgeon, stem cell clinician, researcher, to know if it's even fair to raise the flag of real world research and this type of collaboration. And this is what we discovered. Over a 6-month process, walking 62 patients through this real world ARISS-1 study, the cost to our practice was 1 full-time employee, an additional $15,000 of expense to our practice, and over 2,000 man hours to get this study completed. Our partnership with Folium Biosciences was invaluable, but we realized that even though they were willing to provide some expertise and the products, that no one has time to really manage the data and the process. But the reward of doing this hard work, beyond being able to help over 110 citizen scientists now, and if you add in our patients here in our practice, we're well over 250 patients that we've been able to help. We've also gained valuable partnerships with labs that appreciate and want to be a part of this type of real world experience in the hemp space. So thank you to Senesco and CNS Vital Signs, Genomind, our genomics partner, Sleep Image, that contributed the overnight sleep studies to ARISS-2, and Vibrant America, that's helping us look at the stool biome, and Viome, which is doing the same. So we now in ARISS-2 have a laboratory or objective measure of what we consider to be the central theme for CBD and the cannabinoids effect on improving anxiety, insomnia, and irritable bowel. And that is, we believe there's 7 points of influence in the gut-brain bridge that hemp oil contributes to human physiology. 1, it stabilizes the gut biome. And we are depending on stool analyses from Vibrant America and Viome to help us better understand that influence. Number 2, it improves the estrobolome, the performance of that part of the gut microbiome that regulates whether or not the estrogen molecules are reabsorbed from the stool in the small intestine back into the bloodstream to the liver and contributing to estrogen levels within the body. And we're looking to Senesco Laboratory to help us measure estrogen levels into understanding that influence. Number 3, we're looking at CBD and hemp oil's effect on relaxing smooth muscle. We believe that it does that. There's direct immunomodulation via CB2 receptors. The enterohepatic estrogen promotion we described. The estrogen and serotonin CNS effects are being measured through actual serotonin levels in the urine. And then we're looking at the direct CNS anti-anxiety, focus, and satiety influence by utilizing CNS vital signs online for the neurocognitive testing which they provide. We have covered ARISS 1. We've given you some insight into where we're going with ARISS 2. ARISS 2 will be completed this week, February 2018, and we are going to start compiling all this data on the gut-brain influence until end of spring, early summer, and we'll be able to present those results for one endpoint. We want to help more citizen scientists like this inflammatory bowel sufferer who was courageous enough to get a photo with me. We want to help more people achieve a higher quality of life in this era of high inflammation, susceptible hosts, in other words, immune compromise, anxiety, insomnia, irritable bowel, and pain. We want to help people get greater access to this natural solution, but we want them to also have protocols that help them not waste money and get results more quickly. So by ARISS 2, we'll have not only subjective response from participants, but we'll have objective data as well. And if you are interested in becoming a citizen scientist in one of our future studies, you simply need to email info@arissemd.com. And I would encourage you to go to arissemd.com into our store area or the research page and look a little bit more closely at what we did with ARISS 1. Go ahead and open up that list of scanned documents that show the handwritten responses from our 40-some participants in ARISS 1. And let's do this together. Let's move medicine together forward faster, safely, and effectively. Thank you very much.